Once you're done with one side, you want to flip the sword on its edge so that it's balancing like this on the guard. And then you want to do this side. So the reason we actually need to do both sides in one go is because if we let it harden like this onto the sellotape, then the sellotape is going to be hardened with the epoxy resin. So we need to do both sides in one go. We can't let it dry on one side, we need to do it all in one go. So this is a good way to do both sides, having it on its edge. A bit tricky. Or you can of course put some supports in the very center, like you'd have a center block, so you can work on the other side. Look how far we have the epoxy resin. It goes up to the right middle, so the support in the center might get epoxy resin on top of it. But I'm okay working like this. So be very wary of your surface area. If you get epoxy resin on it, do remember to clean it up, because you do not want that hardening on your surface area if it's quite an important or delicate area. Like me, for example, I'm working in my studio and I would not want this getting on my floor and hardening. But it balances pretty well like this. There's a gap. It's just point of contact is here. You still want to be careful with that though, you don't want that damaging. See the way I angle it? So it just keeps going into the center. And you want to go onto the edge. It's quite a lot of excess. Just keep on moving it around. Obviously that's messy. I'm just going to clear it up. I'm just spreading it so I don't have too much on my spatula, plastic spatula kind of thing. If it's getting really messy, just turn it to a fresh side. This is quite a tricky bit. See, for this I'm going to use my finger. You might want to use gloves of course, but it's just my work method. Since it's such a tight area, you might not want to put too much in, because it's going to get awkward to get out. So once you've got all the gaps filled on both sides and the edge, you want to peel the masking tape off. Make sure you have a bin next to you, because these are going to go in there. You don't want these going on the surface areas or your floor. Like here for example, we already have some epoxy on the floor, so I'm going to have to clean that up. So be very careful. And you just want to peel it that way from into the gap, so it doesn't pull it away onto a clean area. Into the bin. And you see we've got a nice line. See that white area is just residue from the chemicals that I used to bond it together. I used acetone. So sometimes I use super glue, sometimes I use acetone. So you need to make sure that you remove all the sellotape from all the areas, because you do not want the epoxy hardening on top of the sellotape. Just watch where your hands go, because my hand just went on top of that. And you want to flip it around. Watch where you grab it. Do not get your hands on the epoxy. Okay, we've got a bit of a problem here. So you see we've got a bit of a bump here. So it's a bit excessive and it's not on the gap. So if we could just clear it up, just do so. Use gloves or your scraper. Just make sure not to get too much excess. And don't push it into the detail. So I'm just going to wash my hands now, because you see I've got epoxy on my... Actually, I'm just going to continue, because I'm going to have to wash my hands anyway. Just make sure to watch what you grab, what you touch. So I want to use my palms. Also bear in mind, I have my covers not on, but I did tell you to have the covers on yours to make sure yours are protected, but I'm just doing it a bit differently for my current build. So keep that in mind, to have your covers on just to protect it so nothing goes in there. But that's pretty much it. That is the epoxy resin part. So give it about 24 hours for it to cure, and then you will be ready for putty. Again, make sure to clear up the work surface areas. You don't want the epoxy resin staining or damaging your work areas. Very important. And you want to store the sword in an area where it won't get touched by animals, for a cat, for example. So that's another thing to think about.